The black BMW glided through downtown traffic, its polished frame gleaming under the midday sun. Inside, tension crackled like electricity. Laura Kensington, CEO of Kensington Global, her phone pressed to her ear as her voice rose sharper with each passing second. "This is a $1,200 million merger," she barked. "I don't care how much it costs. Find me someone who speaks Japanese and Mandarin." Her perfectly styled hair was coming undone, strands falling across her face. Mascara smeared faintly under her eyes as she jabbed at her phone, desperate for someone to pick up. No answer. Another voicemail. Another dead end. In the front, Marcus Grant, her driver for 3 years, reached toward the radio to lower the volume, hoping to make her calls easier. Laura's head snapped up like a striking snake. "Keep your monkey hands off my car." The insult filled the cabin like a slap. Marcus froze, hand hovering midair. "But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your country in the comment below and please like the video. Thank you. Now let's continue. "You think because you drive my BMW you get to touch my things," she sneered. "You're the help. Stay in your lane." His jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He said nothing. Laura returned to her spiraling phone calls, her voice breaking with panic. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. He'd swallowed these insults for 3 years. 3 years after Stanford, a Harvard master's, 2 decades of U.S. diplomatic service, reduced to invisibility behind the wheel. She thought she knew who he was. She had no idea. And what Laura didn't know was that the man she dismissed as the help was about to save the very empire she was watching slip through her fingers. Laura Kensington unraveled. Her voice bounced in the back of the BMW, frantic and breaking. "What do you mean all 3 interpreter services are booked? Do you understand who I am? This is Kensington Global. We don't wait in line." She slammed the call shut and redialed. Another voicemail. She tried again. Another rejection. Her manicured fingers trembled as she typed furiously, mascara smudging further beneath her eyes. "This can't be happening," she whispered, pacing in the small back seat like a caged animal. Her laptop lay open across the leather, flashing stock reports that showed her company's decline. 3 months from bankruptcy. 200 employees depending on her. If this merger failed, Kensington Global would collapse. Marcus watched it all in the rear-view camera mounted above the console. His eyes stayed steady, his breathing calm. He had seen leaders crack before. Prime ministers, ambassadors, even presidents. Laura was no different. Her phone lit up again. She answered instantly. "Richard, don't tell me we have to postpone. They'll walk away permanently if we delay. 3 years of negotiations gone. 3 years." Her voice pitched higher, bordering on desperation. From the front seat, Marcus listened, silent. He had heard enough of her boardroom crises to know the truth. The deal wasn't just about expansion or prestige. It was survival. Laura Kensington was 1 call away from losing everything. She ended the call with a strangled groan, burying her face in her hands. The glow of the city blurred against the tinted glass as the BMW sped toward the company tower. In the driver's seat, Marcus's grip tightened. He could let her drown. He could stay silent and invisible like she demanded. But watching her claw hopelessly at dead phone lines stirred something deep in him. For 3 years, he had endured her contempt, her dismissals, her insults that cut sharper than knives. He had endured it because he needed the paycheck. But now, the company she mocked him for serving was hanging by a thread, and the only thing that could save it was sitting quietly in the front seat of her BMW. Marcus made his choice. The glass partition began to lower. The glass partition slid down with a soft hiss. Laura's head jerked up, fury sparking in her eyes. "I told you," she snapped, ready to tear into him again. "Miss Kensington," Marcus said calmly. His voice level, professional. "What languages do you need?" The question froze her mid-breath. Laura blinked. "Excuse me. For your merger call," Marcus continued, steady and unshaken. Which languages are required? Her phone hovered in her hand, forgotten. That's not your concern, she said sharply. You're my driver. Japanese and Mandarin, Marcus answered quietly, as if she hadn't spoken. Perhaps Hindi and Korean as well. Her mouth dropped open. What did you just say? He turned slightly, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. I am fluent in Japanese, Mandarin, Hindi, Korean, Arabic, Portuguese, French, German and Spanish. Would you like me to demonstrate? The car went silent. The city noise outside seemed to vanish. Laura stared at him as though he'd started speaking in riddles. You're telling me? Her voice fell to a whisper. You speak 9 languages. Marcus gave a single nod. Fluently. Her phone buzzed in her hand. The caller ID made her stomach twist. Nakamura Global Holdings. The very partners she had been begging to reach. I can't, she muttered, panic rising again. I don't have an interpreter. I'll make a fool of myself. Marcus extended his hand toward the partition opening. May I? Her pride battled her desperation. The phone kept buzzing, the screen lighting up with each ring. Her hand trembled as she finally pressed the device into his palm. Marcus answered smoothly. Moshi Moshi Nakamura-san, he said, his tone transforming into polished, confident Japanese. Laura's breath caught. The shift in him was instant. The timid, invisible driver was gone. In his place sat someone commanding, someone who belonged in boardrooms, not behind a wheel. The voice on the other end responded rapidly in Japanese. Marcus listened intently, nodding, responding with measured respect. Then, without missing a beat, he switched to Mandarin as another executive joined the line. Technical terms flowed from his lips like second nature. Intellectual property transfers, market expansion, licensing structures. Laura could only watch, stunned, as the man she had dismissed for years now negotiated the survival of her company in languages she couldn't even understand. Her driver had just become her lifeline. Laura sat frozen in the back seat. Her eyes locked on Marcus's reflection in the mirror. His entire posture had shifted. Gone was the quiet, invisible driver who blended into the background. In his place was a man who carried himself with calm authority, as if this moment had always belonged to him. On the phone, Marcus's Japanese flowed with precision, his tone respectful, almost ceremonial. The executives on the other end responded in rapid bursts. Laura didn't understand a word, but she could feel the change in the air. The tension in their voices softened. The clipped tone of insult gave way to curiosity, then cautious warmth. Marcus lowered his voice, covering the phone with his hand for a moment. There's been a misunderstanding, he explained evenly. Your legal team's draft contracts used language that appeared overly aggressive. In their culture, it signaled disrespect. They believe Kensington Global sees them as subordinates, not partners. Laura's stomach dropped. That kind of misunderstanding kills deals, she whispered. He nodded once. Exactly. Then he returned to the call, switching seamlessly into Mandarin as another representative joined. His words carried nuance Laura had never heard from any of her professional hires. Respect laced every phrase, but confidence anchored his tone. At one point Laura couldn't hold back. What did you just tell them? Marcus glanced at her through the mirror. That you deeply respect their family's business legacy. That you've been personally studying Japanese business etiquette to honor their traditions. Laura's mouth fell open. But I haven't. You have now, Marcus interrupted gently before turning back to the call. For 20 minutes, the BMW became a moving boardroom. Marcus juggled languages effortlessly, navigating technical jargon, cultural expectations, and emotional nuance. Laura sat silently, watching as the fate of her company shifted before her eyes. Finally he ended the call, his tone warm and deliberate. He handed the phone back to her. They're looking forward to meeting you in person, Marcus said. The discussion is back on track. Laura held the phone like it was made of glass. Her world tilted sideways. She studied him in the mirror, her voice barely audible. "Who are you?" The BMW rolled into the parking garage. Marcus parked in her reserved spot, turned off the engine, and answered quietly. "Someone who needed work 3 years ago. And someone who still believes in second chances." The parking garage was silent except for the soft tick of the BMW's cooling engine. Laura stepped out, her heels clicking against the concrete, her mind reeling. Marcus stayed behind, gathering a folder he'd left on the passenger seat. When she turned back, she saw him slip it under his arm. Curiosity overcame pride. "What's in that folder?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Marcus hesitated, then handed it to her. "Notes. Observations I've made while driving you these past 3 years." Laura flipped it open, expecting mileage logs or repair receipts. Instead, she found color-coded files, meticulous cultural research, detailed summaries of foreign executives' backgrounds, even notes on past failed negotiations. Each section was marked with tabs. Berlin, Tokyo, Mumbai, Seoul. Her pulse quickened. "You've been keeping track of our international deals." "I've been keeping track of the mistakes," Marcus corrected, his voice calm. "Deals that collapsed because of poor communication. Partners who walked away because cultural nuances were ignored. Opportunities lost because your team thought translation was enough." He reached into the folder and pulled out a document. Berlin. 2 years ago, the deal that died overnight. The CEO's father was addressed too casually by your interpreter. In their culture, that was an insult you couldn't walk back. Laura's breath caught. She remembered the fallout, the angry phone calls, the stock dip, the sleepless nights. Marcus pulled another. Mumbai. Contract phrasing left room for misinterpretation. They thought you were trying to claim ownership of their intellectual property. The deal never recovered. Laura's chest tightened. She hadn't known the details. Her team had brushed it off as bad timing. "You knew all this?" she asked quietly. Marcus met her eyes steadily. "Would you have listened if I told you?" "A driver." The words hit harder than any accusation. She looked down at the folder again, each page a mirror showing the blind spots of her leadership. For the first time in years, Laura Sterling, the woman who built Kensington Global with iron will and a flawless image, felt small. Marcus adjusted his tie, his composure unshaken. "Ms. Sterling, your company doesn't have a deal problem. You have a vision problem. And tomorrow, if you want to keep Kensington alive, you'll let me fix it." Laura clutched the folder, her knuckles white. In that moment, she realized the truth. The man she had dismissed as the help might be the only one who could save everything she had built. Laura's penthouse overlooked the glittering skyline, but she barely noticed the view. 4 years, the high-rise had been her fortress, a place to drink champagne, celebrate wins, and remind herself she was untouchable. Tonight, the atmosphere was different. Her empire was dangling by a thread, and the only person holding it steady was sitting across her marble dining table. Marcus. Stacks of papers, contracts, and translation notes were spread out between them. Laura had kicked off her heels, her once perfect hair falling loose. Marcus, still crisp in his white shirt and dark tie, studied the documents with the focus of a surgeon. "First," he said, tapping the contract, "you can't speak to them like you're making a purchase. They want partnership. Use words that emphasize shared vision, longevity, and respect." Laura scribbled furiously, nodding. It was the first time in years she'd taken notes from anyone. "Second," Marcus continued, flipping a page, "don't talk numbers first. In their culture, jumping to figures is a sign you're only here for profit. They need to feel the relationship matters more than the balance sheet." Laura frowned. "But time is money." "In their world," Marcus replied, "patience is profit." For hours he drilled her. He played roles, adopting the mannerisms of the executives, cutting her off when she misspoke, forcing her to restart until her phrasing carried the right weight. Every time she slipped into arrogance or impatience, Marcus corrected her, calm but firm. First she bristled. Laura Sterling wasn't used to being told she was wrong. But as the night wore on, something strange happened. She began to listen. She began to learn. At one point, Laura leaned back, rubbing her temples. "Why are you doing this, Marcus? You could walk away, leave me to crash. God knows I haven't made your life easy." Marcus's expression didn't waver. "Because second chances matter. You need one. And so do I." The clock ticked past midnight. The city outside buzzed with neon and life, but inside that penthouse, something shifted. The lines between employer and driver blurred. They were no longer boss and employee. They were allies preparing for war. Laura looked at him across the table. For the first time, she didn't see the help. She saw the man who might just save her legacy. Dawn broke over the city, turning glass towers gold. For most, it was just another weekday. For Laura Sterling, it was Judgment Day. She stood before the mirror in her penthouse bedroom, dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected power, but her hands betrayed her. They trembled as she adjusted her cufflinks. Every ounce of her reputation, her company's future, her very identity as the iron-willed CEO, depended on what happened in the next few hours. Behind her, Marcus waited in the living room, sipping black coffee, a legal pad balanced on his knee. He had been up all night refining his notes, translating, rehearsing possible objections. His calm presence cut through her storm of nerves. Laura emerged, trying to mask her unease. "How do I look?" she asked, half mocking herself for even saying it. Marcus didn't smile. He studied her like a strategist reviewing his general before battle. "Strong," he said simply. "But remember, it's not just about how you look. It's how you make them feel." The words settled in her chest heavier than any compliment. Down in the garage, the BMW purred to life. The city streets stretched before them, buzzing with morning traffic. Laura clutched her leather briefcase tighter than necessary, her mind running through every line Marcus had drilled into her. Halfway to the meeting, Laura broke the silence. "Marcus, if this works, if we save the company, what happens to you?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "That depends on you." She wanted to ask more, but the words caught in her throat. For once, Laura Sterling wasn't the one holding all the cards. As they approached the tower where the merger would be decided, protesters crowded the sidewalks, shouting about corporate greed. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as the BMW rolled into the underground lot. The world was watching, even if it didn't know the stakes. Laura's chest tightened as the elevator doors closed, carrying her and Marcus upward. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. Marcus placed a hand on her briefcase, steadying it. "Remember, Miss Sterling," he said calmly. "Speak less. Listen more. They already know your power. Today they need to see your respect." Laura inhaled sharply, nodding. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking into a boardroom alone. The boardroom felt like a battlefield disguised in glass and chrome. A polished oak table stretched the length of the room, flanked by executives in dark suits. The Japanese delegation sat on one side, their expressions calm but unreadable. Across from them, Kensington Global's directors shifted nervously, waiting for Laura Sterling to begin. Laura entered with Marcus at her side. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, eyes followed. She walked with the poise of someone who had everything under control, but inside, her pulse hammered like a drum. The lead Japanese executive, Mr. Takahashi, inclined his head politely. "Sterling-san," he said. The word carried weight. Respect but guarded. Laura bowed slightly, just as Marcus had instructed. "Takahashi-san, thank you for meeting with us today." The smallest flicker of approval crossed his features. The meeting began. First, Laura struggled. Her instincts screamed to dominate, to bulldoze through objections with sharp facts and tighter numbers. But every time the urge rose, she felt Marcus's steady gaze at the edge of the room. She remembered his words. "Listen more." So she listened. She let Takahashi outline his concerns. She nodded when another executive explained their hesitation about cultural misalignment. And when the moment came to respond, she spoke not as a conqueror, but as a partner. "I built Kensington Global on ambition," she said evenly. "But ambition means nothing without trust. This merger isn't about taking control, it's about building something lasting together." The translator relayed her words, and a murmur swept the delegation. Mr. Takahashi leaned forward. "You honor our traditions by saying this. Yet actions weigh more than words." Laura hesitated. Then she did something her board had never seen. She gestured toward Marcus. "This is Marcus Reed. For 3 years he's been at my side. Not as a chauffeur but as someone who sees what others miss. He understands the respect you deserve. Today he will sit at this table, not in the shadows." Gasps rippled through the room. Her board shifted uncomfortably, blindsided. But the Japanese executives exchanged intrigued glances. To elevate an employee so publicly to share power in that way, it was a gesture they respected deeply. Marcus stepped forward, his posture calm, his words in flawless Japanese. The atmosphere shifted again, like storm clouds breaking to reveal sunlight. For the first time all morning, Laura Sterling felt the merger tipping in her favor. The air inside the boardroom grew heavier with every passing minute. Papers shuffled, pens clicked, but the true weight of the meeting was in the silence between sentences. Laura sat straight-backed, her hands folded tightly on the table, forcing herself to breathe evenly. Marcus spoke with clarity and restraint, weaving respect into every phrase as he translated cultural nuance into business logic. He was no longer just a man at the table. He was the bridge. Mr. Takahashi adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. "Sterling-san, we admire your willingness to adapt. But we fear Kensington Global will swallow our family company whole. We must protect what has been ours for generations." The words hit Laura like a hammer. Her old self would have fired back with contracts and numbers. But this time she paused, glancing briefly at Marcus. His calm nod told her what to do. She exhaled. "Takahashi-san, I understand. What you built is not just a business. It is your family's story, your honor. I would never erase that. I want it to grow alongside Kensington, not disappear under it." The translator spoke, and a subtle shift spread across the delegation. For the first time, Takahashi's eyes softened. Marcus leaned forward slightly. In fluent Japanese, he added, "Sterling-sama means what she says. She asked me to study your company's history. She knows the story of your founder. She respects the sacrifices made to bring it this far." A murmur rippled down the table. The executives whispered among themselves, their expressions no longer hard but thoughtful. Laura felt her board stir beside her, confused, perhaps even resentful of Marcus's role, but she didn't care. Every instinct told her this was the moment. Then Takahashi asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "If we agree to this partnership, how do we know Kensington Global will treat us as equals?" Silence. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to Laura. Her board shifted uncomfortably, waiting for her trademark arrogance. Instead, Laura pushed the contract aside and looked Takahashi directly in the eye. "You'll know," she said firmly. "Because starting today, the person who saved this deal, Marcus Reed, will have a permanent seat in our negotiations. He represents respect. And respect is the only foundation strong enough for this merger." The room fell into stunned silence. And then, slowly, Takahashi smiled. The tension snapped like a string when Takahashi's smile spread to the other executives. They exchanged quick glances, nodding almost imperceptibly, and then the eldest among them leaned forward. "Sterling-san," he said in measured English, his accent precise but clear. "Perhaps it is true. Respect must come first. If this is your path, then we are willing to continue." The words landed like a lifeline. For a moment, Laura couldn't breathe. 3 years of negotiation, weeks of panic, and hours of humiliation, all balanced on this razor's edge. Now, for the first time, the balance tipped in her favor. Her board exhaled collectively, some slumping with relief, others barely containing their surprise. David Carter scribbled notes furiously while Rebecca covered her mouth, hiding a gasp. But Laura's eyes weren't on them. They were on Marcus. He didn't gloat. Didn't even smile. He simply gave a short nod, calm as ever, like this was just another day at the office. But she knew better. He had turned the tide, and everyone in the room knew it too. "Then we have an agreement," Laura said, her voice steadier than she felt. She extended her hand across the table. Takahashi clasped it firmly with both of his. Cameras clicked. Pens scratched against paper. The merger that had been on the verge of collapse only hours earlier was now alive, reborn through respect and diplomacy. As the executives began packing their documents, Marcus shifted his notes neatly into a folder. His movements were precise, deliberate, but there was something in the way he closed that folder. Final, decisive. Laura watched him, realizing again how blind she'd been for 3 long years. Takahashi turned to Marcus before leaving. In fluent Japanese, he said, "Washington-san, you have given us confidence. You are the reason this partnership is possible." Marcus bowed with humility. "It is my honor," he replied. The delegation filed out, leaving Laura and her team in stunned silence. She sat motionless for a moment, her pulse still racing, then whispered the words that no one in the room expected to hear. Marcus Reed saved this company. The boardroom went dead quiet. Even her harshest critics had no argument. The truth was undeniable. For the first time in years, Laura Sterling felt something she hadn't felt in business. If you made it this far into the story, thank you for watching. Stories like this take a lot of time and effort to create, and your support means everything. If you enjoyed this journey, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, but it helps keep more stories like this coming your way. Don't forget to tap the like button if the story moved you, and share it with someone who would love a tale of redemption and second chances. Your subscription isn't just a number. It tells me you want more powerful stories, more drama, and more inspiration. So please subscribe now and join the community.